Well, hello and welcome to Curiosity, Not Judgment with Birga and Gary.
Hello, everyone.
So obviously we are not in the same place. We are in the same time, different time zones, but where are you hailing from today?
Well, I'm in Pittsburgh. We've got some important meetings tomorrow for work, and I'm here with some colleagues and enjoying the East Coast.
Very good. And how's the weather? Because we're going to hit 90 something here in Albuquerque today.
It is currently, it's not bad here. It's currently 68 degrees. Was surprised. I was assuming it'd be in the 80s, but it's about 70 degrees and a little windy.
All right. Well, enjoy some cooler weather before you get home.
Yes.
I wanted to hit a topic that is pretty polarizing, and you agreed to jump into it. We've had no dialogue about this aside from the topic name, and so we're just going to go for it. I want to talk today about prepping and conspiracy theories. What do you think?
Nice. I don't know. I have a conspiracy about what your motivator is.
Well, I have had lots of conversations on this subject matter since about 1999. And I will say I was in a very vulnerable place when the prep scene for Y2K was unfolding. And I found myself in a heap of fear. And I remember all of the talk about our computer's going to shut down. Can we no longer do banking? Our groceries going to become available or become unavailable rather. And I know that, people very close to me had some very strong feelings about it and were vocalizing very strong feelings. And in the attempt to be prepared, started stockpiling some items. And so I have that as a background in my past, coming all the way up now, 22 plus years later from that time. And we've had the scarcity pockets that have happened during COVID. We had, of course, the toilet paper situation when everybody started stockpiling toilet paper and it ran out of all the stores. And now real time, which is we are in the end of May or mid-May 2022, you can't get baby formula. If you're a mother trying to feed your baby on formula, you're walking into stores and seeing bare shelves. And so I want to talk a little bit about prepping and when and how to do it with curiosity, and how do we avoid really camping out in this place of judgment if we're seeing things going on around us that we totally disagree with.
Yeah, and so it's a very good topic, and it's actually a symptom of many topics, and that is, and the overall one is, how do we not live in fear? Or how do we live in peace, to put it more positively or proactively? And I think there's many ways to do that. And I think that, if you look at, I always try to think of both ends of the scale. One, I put my head in the sand and ignore that there's ever a problem with anything. And I don't have a baby to feed right now, so I can successfully do that with baby formula, right? But I know something's out there. And then the other end is to listen to everything that you see on social media and go out and stockpile. And I don't think anybody's got houses big enough for that. So where do you fall as an individual? How do you determine what you listen to and what you don't?
Well, so let's walk through that. What do you listen to? I mean, I think that's a great first question. How do you be curious about the news that you're hearing? How do you be curious about the things that you're hearing, whether it be, through online forums or from, word of mouth from people that you know and love? How do you make that determination about what to listen to?
It's a great question. And, one of the things that happened to me when I was at the mayor's office is I was trying to figure out how to communicate the programs that were available from the city to people that had been voted in by the legislature, the city council, the mayor's prerogative, whatever ways possible. But how do you communicate with your community? And if you remember at the time, I was really stressing entrepreneurs and entrepreneurism, and why that was why I thought that was a big deal, and all of the different opportunities and resources for entrepreneurs. And what we found out, or what I found out, is that nobody's listening to Walter Cronkite every night at 6 p.m. anymore.
Mhm.
It's not like you've got, and people don't listen to the local news as much anymore.
Right.
So people are usually on some platform, and many people are on BBC, many people are on, Huffington Post, many people are on, sometimes you only get all of your information from a single source,
Mhm.
and you come to trust that source. And sometimes that source is going to tell you about things real time, sometimes ahead of time, sometimes there'll be some conspiracy theories on it,
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be too late. And so, one could argue that you need to listen to multiple sources, and not especially sources that think the way you do,
Mhm.
because then you're in groupthink, and groupthink is never good for any situation you deal with, right?
Yeah. I think we need to pause there for a minute, because I think this is a really, really important thing to consider about not getting your news from exclusively one source. So it has been proven out that these algorithms that are being used by social platforms, and now probably even news agency, I would imagine, because they also are buying advertising space online. These are very complex things that want to cater to your way of thinking. And if you are not aware that your computer, I'm going to say that as a generic term, your computer is trying to dictate the information that it puts in front of you, then you need to be aware that this is a very real situation. If you begin to go down a path watching videos or hearing news clips, or investigating online articles that are in a certain subject matter, those search engines, those algorithms are going to continue to feed you more and more and more stories that it thinks that you're going to click on, because the whole objective is to get you to click. And so the longer you stay on that one train, you're going to get deeper and deeper into that hole and find yourself really immersed. My perspective is, you're going to, at the end of that, you're going to be in a place of deep fear, and then your decision making is going to be radically different than if you were to have been able to branch off and investigate news from multiple channels.
And I'll never forget when I was living in Silicon Valley, and doing a startup out there, and living in Half Moon Bay, California. And I had these commutes, like everybody in California does, to work and back. And mine was by no means the worst commute out there, but it did take a while. And so, and this was, before Audible and other things. You could buy books on tapes, but it was not nearly as convenient as it was now. And I remember, and cell phones had just come on the thing. So I did a lot of talking and meetings by phone while I was in the car. But I would listen to Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal in the mornings, and NPR on the way home. And in my mind, that was a balance between what I was hearing from which sources, and what I would be talking about that evening at dinner, or at a get together with friends, or at a business function, or whatever, because I felt like if I only listened to Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, which was different back then, or NPR only, then I would only get half the picture. So this is not new. I think people think that, oh, well, I mean, going back to yellow journalism and all kinds of things in our past, in our nation's past, people, where they choose to get their news from, where they choose to get their stories from, who they choose to listen to, we tend to listen to people that confirm our own paradigm, our own mental maps, our own set of where we think the world is and where it's going. And so it's always good. I always try to think when I'm talking to somebody else is, well, I already know what I think on the subject. I need to hear somebody different, right? Because otherwise, you may be, by definition, you are missing part of the story, right? I was just listening to this guy the other day that was saying that that whenever you're listening to something, even if you vehemently disagree with it, consider that at least 10% of it's right.
Okay.
Because that's the way you're going to have discussions. That's the way you're going to be able to start a discussion and a dialogue with things. And as we've talked about before, without dialogue, without discussion, no learning takes place. No improvement in anyone's situation takes place, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, so then the curiosity comes in, and which 10% is right? But that's for
Yes.
another time. Well, so let's say that you have had a series of articles in front of your eyes just through an online search, or you've had, your cousin call you up and say, hey, I've heard this is coming. You better start buying blank. And the information is out there to start stockpiling this particular item or a series of items because a shortage is coming. How do we be curious about the information we're receiving and process it in such a way that we are not contributing to, making crises situations, but also operating in a smart place where we're trying to be wise and provide for ourselves and our family in the event that there is something that happens that prohibits us from getting a needed item?
There's a game, our family is way into games and we play games frequently. There's a game called Wits and Wagers. And they give you this trivia question, and then you're supposed to figure out what somebody blurts out an answer. I'm paraphrasing here. I may not be getting this exactly right. And somebody says, is this wrong, right in percentages, right? And so it's always fascinating to me. I'm just in studying this game. You don't really need to know the answer. You need to watch where everybody's betting. And so I guess my answer to that is I kind of listen to an average of the folks out there. Let's take a new movie. New movie comes out. Should I go see it? Right. And I'm so far behind now. It's like, should I watch this movie on Netflix or whatever, Disney Plus, whatever the new one is? And I usually get opinions from various people. And I appreciate the people who know me and know what I would like and know what I would do. So if we surround ourselves with this advisory board of people on subjects, various subjects from various places, and those people are not all thinking the same way, you're probably going to discern pretty close to the right answer by listening to various voices in general in life. Mm-hmm. So with respect to this one, I had a couple of business partners who were like, borderline preppers, right? They were like, well, you got to have this much gold and silver in your house and a safe buried in your foundation. You've got to have so many months of food. You've got to have so many months, getting back to this prepping thing. And then I have another group of friends that say, well, having a case of water in the garage probably isn't a bad idea. And so anyway, I would listen to a kind of an average of different folks that would be saying these things. And quite frankly, that's what I've done. I've done kind of an average of those things. I have, you can go to Costco and buy 2 weeks of food for 2 people for, not very much money. And you can throw that in your garage and it has a shelf life of forever. I don't know, maybe it's got Twinkies and McDonald's fries in it. But I mean, those things exist. And it's not, here's the thing. When you're listening to people, and especially people who know you, who know, okay, well, Gary's about kind of like this, so he's not going to listen to me if I come at him and say, you need to go sell everything and buy this to prepare for this. But he would listen to something reasonable. And so don't go bankrupt yourself preparing for something. Don't put yourself in a situation where you can't even live in your own house. There's a reasonable answer. And if someone comes to you and says they have the answer, that's a red flag for me. Especially if they say, I have the answer for you, right? It's the old saying of, you go to an optometrist and she says, oh, these glasses, she takes off her glasses and says, these glasses work great for me. Here you go. It's like, no. Diagnose before you prescribe, right? So what's right for me is not right for Birga. What's right for Birga is not right for the person down the block. You have to kind of take in what your current circumstances are, what your current resources are, and respond in such a way that brings you peace, right? I mean, I think that's the answer. Now, that doesn't get you into the details of what should I specifically do, but I think it puts us in the right frame of mind in which to make those decisions.
Yeah. I had a conversation not too long ago with somebody who is more on the extreme side of things and asked me, it was some sort of a medication. I don't even remember the name of it. She said, "Oh, do you have enough of this on hand for all members of your family?" And I said, "I don't even know what that is." And then the conversation went on about how critical this thing was that I needed to have in my supply cabinet. And, part of me wants to dismiss that offhand, because it's really easy to start getting into a place of fear if you go too far down that thought process, because, well, if that's the medication that's going to save you from this disease that's going to happen because the government's releasing agents, foreign agents into the air, whatever. I'm just, I'm making stuff up, but it's really easy to start going down that mental hole and get into this place of fear. And so I don't want to offhand dismiss. I really want to choose to be in the posture of curiosity, so I can say, okay, maybe I need to do a little homework and see, what is this stuff that you're talking about? How difficult is it to get now? And how difficult would it potentially be if we do have some sort of crisis at hand? And just to make some wise decisions. But I think laziness and complacency often throw out those two, preparatory measures in terms of doing the homework to figure out if this is right for your own household. And so it's a combination for me of both curiosity and doing some due diligence, because, the latter often falls by the wayside.
Yeah, and I think there's some people who really enjoy being hypervigilant. I am going to protect my family at all costs, and I will make sure that they never ever, bump their knee. Well, okay, you're never going to be able to prevent that. So I think there's a reasonable expectation that you should be reasonably prepared for these reasonable events, right? I mean, should you buy life insurance or not? Yeah, probably that's a good one to have. Right? How much should you get? I mean, do you need to get 100 times your income? Probably not. Do you need to get one extra income? Well, maybe that's a little low. Who knows? But again, this is one of those things that each person needs to decide for themselves. And I certainly don't judge people for deciding on the high or low end of that. And I think the key here is doing your best to do some due diligence. I think it's what's interesting with due diligence today. Like my grandson said to me the other day, Grandpa, I'm just tired of living in unprecedented times. We talked about that. Who knew the baby formula thing was happening? Well, it turns out there are some people who knew as of late last year that this could be a problem. Oh, okay. Well, then how did that information get out, and why didn't it, or what's going on there, and who was listening to what, and could you see the front edge of this happening before it became a real big problem? And then does stockpiling make the problem worse? And how do we be citizens in a community and not exacerbate the problem as it's starting? So all of those are valid questions, I think, that we just need to ask ourselves and come up with our own decisions. I think doing as much in reasoned, intentional, methodical ways, as opposed to knee-jerk ways, is the way to go. But again, I think a lot of this has to do with personal preference, and who your advisors are.
Well, you just said something that is reminiscent of a conversation in the past on a whole different subject matter, which is that bell curve, right? You've got your early adopters,
right,
all the way to the laggards. And so if you're looking at product hoarding, and I don't mean for the individual, but I'm gonna say as a nation, right? You've got news that comes out. Let's use the baby formula situation as an example. You got news that's out there in the fringes. The early adopters are going to be the ones that go out and start buying up all the baby formula, right? And then you get to your next level, stock is getting low, people start panic buying because they don't see it. And then, very quickly, it throws you over the edge of the bell curve. And then by the time you get to your laggards, maybe those are the people that really need the product, and there's absolutely nothing left for them to have. I don't know, it's very interesting that model works in a whole different, way of thinking.
statistics work, period. I mean, it's all about, sine waves and bell curves, right? That's everything, politics, economy, everything. And you, while there is no crystal ball, right? One of my favorite sayings is, it's easy to predict the future, just keep a keen eye on the inevitable. If you are keeping a keen eye on the inevitable on something that's important to you, you can see the signs way before the thing happens, 100% of the time. Now, I'm not tuned into baby formula because I'm not feeding any babies right now, but there are people who are. So I think what you're saying or what you're pointing out is a really important fact in all this. What's important to you? Because to your friend, that certain medicine was important. To a mother who for whatever reason needs formula to feed their baby, that's very important to them. So I think a constant and changing assessment of what's important to us is part of the equation, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I want to challenge you on something you just said, though, because you said, if you're paying attention, you're always going to, and I'm paraphrasing this. I want you to correct what I'm saying because maybe I misheard you. That if you're paying keen attention, you're going to be aware of these kinds of things. I would think there's a whole lot of mothers of babies. They've got so much to do. They're not paying attention to the news, or that's not something that is in front of them. And so by the time the need arises and they're physically driving to the store and the shelves are bare, that's when the news becomes real.
I'm with you. I guess where I'm coming from is more of we all can't think about everything.
Right.
But if you get steeped into something, you can see the trends pretty easily. I mean, take EVs for an example, right? Our current distribution.
Define that for
sorry, electric vehicles. I'm in the space now where I'm starting to think of how are we thinking we're going to implement all of these EVs that are supposedly coming down the road? And if we start coming down the road, pun intended, and if we are going to start legislating EVs into the system, is the system ready for it? And the answer is it's not. And so the current distribution system, electrical system, can't handle one EV per driveway, let alone two. So what are we doing about that? And I think if you're in it, you're very aware that we've got a looming problem coming, and you can predict exactly what that problem is going to be, and you can start taking steps to alleviate that problem now, and then start clanging the bell saying, hey, we've got a problem here and we better be doing something about it. And so I guess absolutely right, we're all busy, but I'm just saying the clues are there if you're going to take the time to look for them. So to your point, if a mother is super busy and doesn't have the time to look for that and doesn't assume there's ever going to be a problem with formula, then you're going to get stuck, right? And so that's part of your own assessment of what's important to you. The other half of that, as I was saying, that is, clanging the bell and who's going to listen, right?
Yeah.
Because people get set in their ways, or they don't believe there will ever be a problem with baby formula, or whatever is the latest, is the next shortage. But again, if you just do a little bit, it doesn't take much investigation into the system, you can see these things coming. And there were people, apparently it's coming out in the news now, that knew about this late last year, early this year, that were giving warning signs. Who listened, who knew? How do you listen to all of those warning signs? Is there a website now? You have to ask the question, website of warning signs, so I can go and look. And but we are all very busy. How do you keep track of it all?
Well, I think we've have so many aspects of this conversation that we could continue to explore. Maybe we'll do that at another time, but for today, just kind of bring it home. So some prevailing themes that I'm seeing from this is, that we do need champions in these industries that see the signs and can be kind of the clarion call to the community about what's ahead. But we as consumers, we as the community need to have a curious mindset so that we weigh the news coming out. Is this person, the real deal? Do they know what they're saying? And do we need to heed their warning and act upon it so that we're prepared for ourselves and our families? Are they one of the extremists? And in that, I also heard you say there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, right? You consult with people who know you, who you trust, who you know to be reasonable and rational, and begin to have these conversations. So if you're hearing these warning calls from a particular voice or a particular stream, bring it before your counselors, so to speak, the people that you allow to speak into your life, and begin to assess, like, hey, what do we think about this message? And how much stock are we going to put into this? And is that going to lead us to take action in buying or preparing in a certain way?
I think those are all very good. And the other part in there that I thought was a really good theme is what is important to you, and becoming and being very aware of what is important to you among the myriad of things out there that are important to different people.
Yeah.
And that changes from time to time.
Yes, it does.
Baby formula is a great example. If I don't have a baby, this isn't something that's affecting me right now.
But everybody needs toilet paper.
But everybody needs toilet paper. Yeah, that's right. So what are the things that are important to me, and to continue to assess that as it changes?
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, thank you for indulging me in this conversation. And I will let you go have dinner. I know you're several hours later than I am, but we'll look forward to being back with you face to face soon.
Okay. Take care.
Right. Thanks. And don't forget, we always love to hear your comments and your feedback on curiositynotjudgment.com. So please do leave us some notes right there. So until next time, have a great day.